Hello and welcome back to the e-commerce brain trust podcast. I'm your host, Kiri Masters, head of retail strategy at Acadia. And today I'm joined by Russ Dieringer from Stratably. Welcome back, Russ.
Hey, Kiri, great to be back.
Yeah, I think this is the third year that we're doing a predictions episode. Is that ringing a bell for you?
Yeah, 3 years. We're going to get better each year.
Yes, always exciting to get to the end of the year and think about the trends already shaping e-commerce and looking out to next year. This year, we're going to do a sort of a more general overview of what we think will shake out in 2024, and then some specific, more uh, we'll have some more specific predictions for 2024 that will be interesting, perhaps a little bit controversial. We'll see. So, Russ, if you're not familiar with Russ Dieringer from Stratably, Russ leads the creation of the company's personalized, research driven education programs that close the e commerce knowledge gap inside consumer brands. Russ has been advising brands on e commerce for nearly a decade, and you'll often find him enthusiastically discussing how lucky we are to be working in the digital commerce industry. So, Russ, let's start off maybe with reviewing our predictions from last year and seeing what we got right and wrong.
Yeah, I think we were, at least I'll speak for myself. I did okay. I had a decent batting average. Um, the, I think I did three predictions. The first one was AMC, Amazon Marketing Cloud adoption ramps. And we had predicted 75% of brands and advertisers on Amazon adopting it. Um, According to our benchmark, that has come true. If we went back a year, AMC knowledge and awareness and that sort of thing was pretty low. But we always felt very strongly about it just because of the power of it as a tool. I know you all at Acadia were early adopters and are doing a lot of cool and interesting things with that tool. And I think the industry is rapidly adopting it in various forms. Amazon advertising has come out with a ton of educational content around it and that sort of thing. So I would say I got that prediction correct.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Should I move on to two?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Prediction number two, which was a little controversial last year: Instacart and GoPuff go public, emerging as kind of leaner, meaner companies. And that one is 50% correct. So Instacart did IPO a few months ago, and they were a leaner and meaner company, generating profitability, but only 50% correct because GoPuff did not go public.
Do you think there's a chance of that next year?
I don't know. You haven't heard much from GoPuff, and
Mm-hmm.
Instacart's business has decelerated. It's still growing, and actually relatively nicely compared to grocery peers. But you don't hear that much about GoPuff. I don't think the IPO market is particularly great right now for GoPuff's business. Um, but let's see. I mean, let's see because if they need to raise, they may run into a scenario where they need to raise money in in the next year, which would likely cause them to have to go public. So we'll see. I don't feel as strongly about it as I did a year ago.
As a spoiler, it's not on your predictions list for 24. So,
Yes,
all
it's not on my
right.
list.
And what about your final prediction from
And my
last?
last one was that Amazon makes a big grocery acquisition in an attempt to build out a meaningful physical store format that would meet their fresh physical store format. That was wrong, although I will say they should have
Yeah.
done this, but they were really unable to. The fresh physical store format has really, really struggled. It's been challenging for them to get right. Within the last week or so, they've announced plans to. They've announced their redesigned stores are on the right trajectory, and that they think they can open up a couple more stores in 2024. So more kind of par for the course at Amazon Fresh. And they did not make a big acquisition, even though there were opportunities to do so, particularly with the Spinco assets from the Kroger Albertsons deal, which would have been in some respects perfect because they were up for sale. So I was wrong on that one. So one correct, one 50% correct, and one wrong.
Excellent. Well, my predictions from last year were the first one was Walmart Connect adoption grows and puts pressure on Amazon ads growth. So this one, I'd probably say is like half right, like yours. Certainly, Walmart Connect revenue grew faster than Amazon's advertising revenue grew by a good clip, actually. Russ, thanks for helping me out with the summary there. But Walmart Connect revenue grew in the 3 quarters this year 39%, then 36%, and then 26% year over year, while Amazon advertising grew 23%, 22%, and 25% year over year in each quarter. Um, Putting pressure on Amazon ads growth, that's the part where I'd give myself, I'd mark myself down a little bit there, because Amazon advertising, it's much bigger. And so even with a slower percentage growth number, it's still grown much faster than Walmart. So I don't see brands necessarily like pulling back on Amazon advertising in favor of Walmart Connect.
Yeah, I agree. I think brands are putting more into both of those, and they
Yeah,
both had a great year.
yeah. Yeah, but Walmart didn't, to my knowledge, really cannibalize Amazon too much. My second prediction was that Amazon will capture more advertising revenue from non-endemics. Um, and I'm not sure how to measure this one, because I haven't really, there's no real breakdown as far as I know. Anecdotally, and sort of just like pure speculation on my part, it's been fairly static. I haven't seen any big new announcements about non-endemic capabilities or how Amazon's really winning in this area. Just so from a like public rhetoric standpoint, it doesn't seem like we're in a very different place than we were this time last year. What do you think, Ross?
I agree. I think it was kind of more status quo there. I think there's a lot of education that's needed for non-endemics, and also just performance proof that it is substantially better performance than what they're already doing today. I will say the Thursday night football stream last night, there was a Geico ad with a QR code that you could follow. So, they're progressively getting there, but I agree. I think it was more stay the course on that one this
Yeah,
year.
more to come on non-endemics later in the episode. And then this one is exciting, Russ. I just googled this morning. I mean, it's exciting but terrible.
Yeah.
My last prediction was bankruptcy of one or more large Amazon aggregator. Just googled it. Wall Street Journal 16 hours ago. Thrasio is filing for bankruptcy,
Hmm.
which is not particularly shocking now. But this time last year, it wasn't really clear how much trouble those aggregators were going to be in this year. I mean, the cost of debt has really, really ramped up. It's been very difficult for them to actually execute on that business model. Turns out, the operational side of running a brand and inventory is harder than, just some spreadsheets will lead you to believe. So, yeah, that is the largest aggregator, just filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah, very interesting, that space. I think there's a lot of sort of criticism leveled at those aggregators, although I do like to remind everyone that even a very sophisticated platform named Amazon significantly overshot too what it thought growth was going to be, resulting in billions of excess costs from the excess capacity that it built. So they weren't the only ones that sort of overshot and overestimated what digital demand was going to be post pandemic. But the capital structure of those models with the debt and the purchase prices they paid really made it challenging once given that demand didn't quite get to what their models had hoped it would.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The winds certainly shifted on those guys. All right, so Russ, maybe we can start off with our 2024 predictions with some softer thematic items that I think everyone listening is going to tend to agree with before we get into the more speculative bets from each of us. What would you like to
Okay.
start with?
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, I think we should definitely talk about retail media, right? I would say big picture, brands have been really, I think, quite pleased with retail media performance. I think there continues to be a desire for standardization and just better measurement, and maybe brands would suggest that they wish their retail counterparts would have realistic expectations about spend and some of those things. But for 2024, we would expect brands to at least maintain the percentage of their sales that they're spending on retail media. I think based on our research, Amazon and Walmart Connect are going to be two of the networks that see brands increase the percentage of their sales that are spent there. Um, if if you're a retailer that has struggled to grow or maybe even decline this year from a digital perspective, I think brands are getting more sophisticated in where they spend, and they're probably going to pull back on those. So, um, Amazon and Walmart should be the big beneficiaries. I think some of the ones that have seen slower growth or declines are going to struggle to really make the case that brands need to be increasing their spend there. And I would say the last point is in our research, we do hear brands planning to expand the number of networks that they advertise on. So to give
Mm,
the listeners a sense, in all of our research and what we've seen from other research companies, somewhere around like 4 to 5 retail media networks are active inside of consumer brands. And our research suggests that's going to expand. And we would think, maybe to another 3 to 4 over the next year. And that's mainly driven by brands hiring retail media people into their organization. And so I feel like they've gotten their arms wrapped around to a degree the most strategic and the biggest retail media networks. And now that they've got that foundation built, if you will, they want to expand to more and test out more and see what the capabilities are.
yeah, I agree with that. So I'm going to roll into an overall prediction that I have, not so much a prediction, but a theme I'm seeing. I was at a lunch this week with uh, a dozen e-commerce people in Atlanta where I live. And so they were, heads of e-com or like VP of the Amazon channel at an apparel brand and things like that. I'm talking about for a long time. Everyone came from someone somewhere in an adjacent capability. So we have people who came from the sales side of the org and then they moved into digital, or they came from shopper marketing and they moved into e-com, or they came from somewhere else, And now I think, we're now in an era where there's people who are university graduates and are going to be like the e-commerce native people brought into the correct place in an organization where e-commerce really should sit, or in a center of excellence, and that's all they're going to know. They're not going to have the shopper marketing background, they're not going to have the national sales background, which is totally fine. It'll just be a different era of talent where this is going to be, retail media is going to just be advertising to these people. So that's it's not really a prediction. It's kind of obvious, but I thought it was worth throwing out there that the people of our vintage have come from somewhere else, and the new talent coming into the space is going to just be native to retail media and marketplaces as the thing that they grow up in their career with.
That's like a polite way of saying we're getting old.
Well,
I would say I agree. I think it'll be interesting to see. Maybe there won't be such a debate, that's just
No,
kind of
no,
lingering about like physical versus digital and that sort of thing. But I'm also excited to see. This isn't going to happen in a 1 year time span, but
mhm,
just the leaders that are doing digital for their organizations today, do they become the leaders of the whole company? And we've talked about like boards of directors having relatively limited digital expertise.
mhm,
I think the C-suite today is not dominated by people that have really strong e-commerce backgrounds. But if you think about what it takes to be a successful e-commerce leader, the cross-functional component of that, just the tighter connection to the consumer through e-commerce that you can get, et cetera, et cetera, those are the types of people that should naturally become the leaders of these brands and these retailers over time. So again, we won't see that clearly in just the next 12 months. But just as sort of the new entrants into the organization are going to be digitally native, e-commerce native, I think the top of the organization too is going to be filled with the ones that have the e-commerce experience.
yep, absolutely. What about another theme, overall theme that's less of a sharp prediction, more of a theme that you want to throw out?
I would just say for Amazon, I think its growth has been underappreciated this year. So if you think about Amazon's assortment, obviously they have a lot of CPG exposure, but they have an enormous amount of general merchandise exposure. And if you follow retailers, Amazon's retail peers that have general merchandise exposure, that those categories have done terribly for
Mm,
those retailers, down, double digits and that sort of thing. And meanwhile, Amazon's grown double digits year to date, despite
mm,
this enormous discretionary exposure. So we attribute that to Amazon gaining significant share in those categories over the last 12 months. And that is primarily driven by the inherent advantage they have with their marketplace. So as consumers are looking for value and looking for good deals and looking for branded alternatives because they can't afford the brand in this type of inflationary environment, they're going to Amazon. And somehow Amazon has been able to drive double digit growth in this really, really difficult environment. And in the past, Amazon's business was much smaller, but now we're talking about an enormous retailer, arguably, in our estimate, the biggest retailer in the US, bigger than Walmart when you consider its marketplace. So I think that's just been sort of an underappreciated performance this year. I would expect Amazon to grow double the rate of its mass retail peers in 2024 and continue to improve profitability because of what it's done with its move to a regional fulfillment network. And it's just continuing to grow into the capacity that it built out during the pandemic. So Amazon, as is really just just getting stronger in a
yeah,
lot of respects, despite more competition and more omni-channel sort of businesses doing well and that sort of thing. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be negatively impacting Amazon in any real measurable way.
yeah. It's amazing when you put it that way. They're already huge and just getting bigger and better. It is a pretty incredible story. Um, well, one sort of more general theme from me is it seems to have accelerated in the past few months, and I know for a fact that you have heard the same thing, Russ. But a lot of brands asking for proof of incrementality on their retail media ad spend and retail marketplace investments, and they want to know if I invest 10% more in this channel, is it going to be incremental and not cannibalize my sales over here? And it is a different flavor of a question I feel like I've been answering since 2016 about Amazon. And it is kind of frustrating. I think that there is, there's some um, software companies out there who are trying to create some workarounds and factor in some incrementality that's directional at best. But at the end of the day, if you understand that these retailers are very, very much walled gardens and there is zero incentive for them to actually sort of prove incrementality to anyone, I just think it is it's an ask that is unreasonable.
I mean, look, we could do a series of podcasts on, talking about this question of incrementality. A few comments. I can't help myself on
I know,
this.
and to be fair, like with at Stratably, you've done like at least 3 or 4 different amazing thought pieces on incrementality. So for further reading, please check out incrementality at stratably.com. But yes, a couple of thoughts from you would be great.
So, a couple of things. One is just an analogy in my mind is sort of like the high bar that we put on self-driving cars, where if a self-driving car has one accident, we shut down the whole program. Meanwhile, humans are driving around, we're getting in accidents all the
Yeah.
time, and we just sort of live with that. So there's this higher bar with self-driving cars, and I also think then there's this higher bar with just e-commerce generally. Like show, like all the questions are centered around show me that that is incremental if you expand to that channel, but no one's asking like, well, is this existing channel that's a high cost to serve and is not growing, is that incremental? We're not asking that question, but we could be. So first of all, I think there's this perhaps unfair bar around incrementality. But besides setting that aside, I think that you need every brand, every company needs to have some type of framework to understand incrementality. And there has been a big push to really, and it makes sense to really quantify it, to take a very quantitative focus and try to measure it with absolute precision. And what a lot of brands had historically relied on, the mixed media modeling that tends to discount, retail media, not because the retail media is not driving discovery and awareness and sales, but just because the models are sort of adding this in at the end, if you will, and they're not really true models of the retail ecosystem. There's limitations to those models. So we've talked about this in a variety of ways, like alternatives to understand to measurement. We don't just have to rely on MMMs. Some of what Amazon has done is really innovative on like with AMC to bring it full circle back to that. Um, there's also concept with experiment testing and that sort of thing. So there's not just one measurement model to rule them all. You need to triangulate in order to try to get it incrementality. We also think there's just a logical framework that you can think through with incrementality. And as an example, like with Instacart, one of the ones that we've been getting a lot of questions around incrementalities with Instacart. We have this sort of like 6-step framework to try to determine is this going to be incremental or not. For Instacart, I think it's as simple as this for grocery category brands. Are your competitors there or not? Instacart's going to do 30 billion in GMV this year. And we just think it's unreasonable to expect a consumer, they're on there, they're building their basket. If they want a energy bar or whatever, and you don't think it's incremental, your competitors are on there, they're going to get that sale. Unless you just have diehard brand loyalty, which is increasingly rare nowadays. We just think it's unrealistic to think they're going to, go to the store for your particular product. So, um, so I don't think that question's going to go away. But I'm optimistic. I mean, I think we're getting sharper responses to it. I think the technology is improving to try to get to, a more realistic model of the world and, what's driving consumers to ultimately, buy things. I would just challenge all of us to say like, well, if we're asking about this channel incrementality, let's ask about this other channel with incrementality. And let's like, sort of have a
A
more
fair.
even playing ground, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yes, absolutely. And I know that you have done a ton of thinking and develop that framework. So yeah, absolutely could go into a rabbit hole there, but just a trend that will persist through 24, I think. All right, Russ, what about some of the more the pointy end of your predictions for next year?
Well, I think so. We could stick with the measurement theme.
Yep.
Um, last year we predicted that there'd be this massive ramp in adoption of AMC. I think that Amazon's rivals are looking at that and watching that closely, and they've watched that progression over the last 12 months, and they know that that's driving brands to want to spend more money with Amazon advertising. So they need to respond. So we would expect Walmart and Walmart Connect, which is the second most advanced retail media platform available, arguably. I mean, we could arguably, but they're doing great things, and brands want to spend more money. We would expect Walmart to have some sort of significant clean room announcement in some form
Yeah.
of partnership with a clean room provider that will be at least a big deal with the announcement. It'll probably take time for the details to emerge and for adoption to really take place. Like you can think of maybe 18 months time span, something of that nature. But we think that Walmart will respond to the success that Amazon has had with AMC.
Yep. I think that's a great one. So, major clean room announcement made by Walmart. Excellent. Uh, yeah, you keep rolling. Maybe give us
Okay.
two or three more.
Okay. This one's gonna be a little. I feel like this one's controversial. I don't know. I think that Amazon is going to ultimately admit defeat on its fresh physical stores and shut them down next year.
Out.
So and I think it's controversial because of a couple of things. One, they just said, "Hey, we've redesigned these stores and they're doing better than the old ones, and we want to open more in 2024." I think they've adjusted their strategy and they want to be focused on more just a couple of markets and kind of get mass density in a couple of markets rather than scattered kind of all around the periphery of the country, East Coast, West Coast, South, North, kind of skipping the middle part of the country. So they're adjusting their strategy. They're doing some revisions to the stores, et cetera. So that's one reason why this shouldn't happen. The other reason is there's just absolute consensus thinking in the industry that you have to have physical stores to win in grocery. That has to happen. That's what I hear when I talk to really smart grocery people. I think that the issue with that logic is that we just don't know of an alternative really to
Yep.
that. And so, at least at the scale that Amazon could bring to this. So, we think that the fresh
Right.
store.
Every category that Amazon has ultimately dominated in, the industry professionals at the time would have said that it's impossible. You can't sell books online. Or
Every
you can't
category.
sell yeah,
Yeah,
you can't sell toys online. It's not a thing. Yeah.
exactly. So, and by the way, Amazon has a significant fresh.com business already. So they're doing this, and we think that they can lean all the way into that, and that they don't actually need this physical store format that is an absolute just rounding error in the grand scheme of Amazon. In addition, the ability for them to acquire grocery chains, I think, has probably gotten worse in the last 12 months, just from a regulatory perspective.
Mm.
Grocery rivals have only further established themselves as from an omni-channel perspective. So I would love to see Amazon just say, look, we tried physical stores. We learned a lot. That's great. But we've got this fresh.com business, and we're going to put all of our effort, all of our resources towards overcoming that consensus thinking that you have to have a grocery store in order to meet all of these different consumer trips and baskets and that sort of thing. So we'll see. We'll see if that comes true or not. But that would be sort of maybe a controversial prediction for
Off the
those,
top of your
with
head, do you know how many fresh stores there are currently?
I think between 40 and 50, don't quote me on the exact number,
Okay.
but somewhere around that. They shut some and they had like paused some openings and that sort of thing. So, 40-ish or so, um, which obviously at that amount, that doesn't even register,
Like you said, it's a kind of a rounding error. It
yeah.
is interesting, don't hear so much about the fresh stores. It is where some of these more experimental retail media uh, things actually happen as well. I remember going to Unboxed last year in 2022, and some of these experimental retail media things that they were rolling out were happening in fresh stores. So it's been the testing ground for a lot of things for a while. And some of those initiatives never make it, but that can be true. That is true for a lot of what Amazon does. So yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think that fresh has really sort of you just don't hear so much about it, even compared to Whole Foods, which as well as not sort of we don't see so much innovation happening there today either.
Yeah, we don't see real clear linkages in this strategy. I mean, we do. I mean, you can pick stuff up, and there's going to talk about delivering from there and that sort of thing. But it's not. I mean, they've owned that for 6 years now. So it just never turned into the omni-channel juggernaut that was feared in the amongst Amazon's grocery rivals when they did that
Right.
acquisition.
All right, you got one more for us.
Um, sure. Last one, Amazon streaming TV. I think is one of the most interesting new developments out of Amazon. So they announced a little while back that they were going to make Prime Video ad supported for all of its Prime users. So instead of Netflix, where you could trade down into an ad supported tier, Amazon's just by default, everyone's going to be served ads. And they're uh, have big expectations for this advertising business. They're looking for really big commitments from brands. We think that this is going to actually be a great success story for Amazon just because they're going to have an enormous ad supported streaming advertising offering,
Mm,
bigger than peers. And so bigger reach and much better measurement in terms of understanding how those dollars are working for brands. Now,
yep.
in 2024, the expectations are very high in terms of what Amazon's looking for. I'm sure it's going to be an expensive platform. Those things are going to, slow growth a little bit or slow sort of the start to the platform. Timing of upfronts is a little bit off too. So there's a lot of things that Amazon's going to have to work through with this. But we think it's going to be really interesting, particularly for big brands that are already doing TV advertising. Why would you not try this and go big? And ultimately, as you start to be able to really measure this type of advertising, does that change sort of the nature of TV ads, which were always, not real direct response, type content on advertising? If you can start to drive direct response, like does that change how we advertise and like what we see in advertisements? So that's a little bit more theoretical, but I think the prediction about streaming TV becoming a big becoming a part of these big CPG brands' TV budgets, I think we're going to see that next year. And I think Amazon's sort of strategy to make the default ad supported is interesting and unique.
Yeah, I like this one. I think that the I think for the very top end of CPG, they're already tapping into streaming TV. And one thing that I would add to this is it kind of flew under the radar for a long time, but IMBD IMBD TV. That's why it flew under the radar. No one
Yeah.
can pronounce it. And then that sort of got rebranded to Freevee, and that has been a streaming TV network that Amazon has owned for some time. That is programmatic, and so they have had some experience with this. When I have watched Freevee specifically for the ads. I got geo targeted with some ads. There is a fast food chain here in the southeast called Zaxby's, which is very regional, and I was targeted with ads for that. So I know that that's pretty basic, but I was specifically geo targeted. I completely agree. There is way more room for audience customization here. Um, and that is a preview to one of my predictions as well. But I like this a lot. We at Acadia, we have run some streaming TV experiments on Amazon DSP, and they have been really interesting to watch. And especially with the marketing cloud and the fact that we can now see how these ad units work together and improve the purchase journey um, over time. It's a really really cool part of the Amazon advertising toolkit, especially for those non-endemic brands as well that selling cars or airlines or banks and things like that. Um, we'll probably see more interest from them with the streaming TV capabilities too.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things to watch near term is just the case studies and that sort of thing that come out of the Thursday night football streaming program that will be on, I guess, right before Black Friday. That would make sense. So coming up for the Turkey 5 days. So that'll be the first time that they're doing that. And, what type of shopping behavior, what type of demand can they generate out of that? So that'll be an interesting one to watch as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, so I'll roll into my predictions. I'll start with that one actually. Thursday night football and other streaming gets more customized with audience targeting. This was honestly, this is kind of surprising to me. When I sat down and watched the first Thursday night football game, I had six of my colleagues from Acadia. We were all in a spreadsheet in real time in a Google sheet, all plugging in what ads we were seeing because I was convinced that we would see different ads based on even just geographic targeting. So we had someone in New York and someone, like we were all around the place, different ages, different demographics. We all saw the exact same ads. And I just thought it was so odd, like considering all of the information that Amazon has about me and showing me the same ads as everyone else just seemed like in 2023 such a miss, frankly. And so I think that that's going to, as you mentioned, with Prime Video really coming in as its own advertising funded network, we'll see more customization options there that will drive down the cost of these big streaming campaigns for advertisers because we won't just have to target everyone in the nation watching Thursday night football. We can zone in on suburban parents or baby boomers or people who are in market for a espresso machine.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was like great. I'm glad you all did that study. If just to kind of track like how well are they personalizing? It doesn't sound like very much at all. And that's from the leader, in retail media by a long shot. So it's
Yeah.
must be challenging, to do that. But if anyone can do it, they're going to be the ones.
Yeah, and I went to an event where there was a leadership of Thursday Night Football at Amazon there, and I asked about personalization. I said, "What? Why have we not seen personalization?" They said, "Well, there is personalization when you actually click through, like on a car ad, and you use the QR code. You click through. There's personalized content once you get to that landing page, essentially." I was really talking more about like what ads am I served and all the waste that comes with that when I'm not in market for a new car, when I don't have, Alzheimer's. Like
Yeah.
I'm seeing all these ads that are irrelevant to me in the first place.
Yeah, I might challenge too, even that landing page personalization, because even last night, clicking on an outdoor apparel brand took you to the kind of the homepage of that outdoor apparel brand. So it was just kind of, there wasn't, a heavy it wouldn't even take you to like the, particular product that was being shown. So,
Mm,
yeah, so sounds like some room for opportunity there.
room for opportunity for sure. My second prediction for next year is that Walmart and TikTok will announce a significant ads or commerce partnership. So we just saw Amazon and Facebook deepening their partnership from a commerce uh, standpoint and really joining forces there, which is very interesting. We saw Amazon and Pinterest do, deepen their partnership there as well. And I think with Amazon trying to become TikTok with Inspire and TikTok trying to become Amazon with TikTok Shop, there's too much there's too much competition between those two. But I actually think that Walmart could be a really great partnership fit for TikTok to have a much deeper commerce integration and an ads integration. You think about also the demographic of the TikTok audience, that it's a younger consumer, value oriented. That could be a really great partnership for TikTok as well.
If
For
we go
yeah,
if we go back a couple of years, I think it was like Microsoft and Walmart almost bought the US
that's right.
operation of
Yes,
TikTok during that time. Um,
yeah, that was
and so maybe
2020.
there's some good relationships there that can be rejuvenated. I did see an article in the information about Amazon approached or had discussions with TikTok about doing something similar to what they recently have done with Meta and
Mm.
Snap. And prior to that, Pinterest and those publishers, and they were kind of rebuffed by TikTok. So yeah, maybe it's just too close of competition, and Walmart could be a better option for TikTok.
Yeah, well, the Amazon and Facebook integration is really going to show either the ideal playbook or maybe some lessons of what not to do, so that TikTok partnering with Walmart, for example, could there's a proof point there. It also gets people used to the idea of being able to have a shopping experience within a social app that is sort of has the back end of a more trusted retailer like a Walmart or Amazon, which I think is kind of the issue with the TikTok shop, is that there isn't really the same uh, confidence,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, and two, I don't obviously don't have the inside information on the partnership deal terms between Amazon and Meta and Snap, but maybe Walmart also strikes deals with those platforms as well and does something similar that Amazon has done. And I got to think that those ad platforms, if Amazon, if this new ad format, where you can kind of see the PDP and check out and that sort of thing, if that works, I got to think they'd be going to the other biggest retailer in the country and wanting to do, a similar kind of semi-custom or custom type of ad format. Obviously, Amazon has this advantage of its Prime membership and that sort of thing. Walmart, has Walmart Plus. It's just not at the same scale. But maybe not just TikTok, but even the other social platforms.
Maybe, like you said, we don't know the terms if there is an exclusivity or something like that. But yeah, that's definitely a potential scenario. All right, and then this is probably my favorite prediction for next year. I predict that there will be a significant retail media network data co-op that will be announced. And this kind of goes to the pain point that brands have around incrementality. And I don't know, like, if there's that side of it. But the struggle that a lot of these smaller, like non-core retail media networks have is around scale and the volume of customer data that they have. Trying to compete with Amazon on a customer data and like audience targeting capability standpoint is really, really hard, because Amazon knows not just what I buy in my grocery cart, but they know what apparel brands I like. They know what kind of pets I have at home. They know more about like when I last moved. They know about what kind of car I have. So all of that data all together provides this really rich context of like who I am, my preferences, my interests, my household, etc. If you're Ulta, you might know about my beauty preferences, but you don't know about my home or my pets or anything like that. And I think there's a huge opportunity for some of these non competing retailers like an Ulta and a Lowe's to come together, pull their data, in a clean room environment, privacy safe and everything, and have that data for themselves, but also sort of use that as part of their advertising value prop as well, to be able to better segment the audiences within their customer data set and offer that back to retailers as a more rich data set that is more predictive and more valuable.
I love it. I mean, big picture, how I think about it is there's just a lot of value creation that can come when you start connecting data. So if you think
Mm-hmm.
about a brand, they have obviously their own data and information about whether, their D2C site, but also, their business at all their retailers. And each of those retailers will give them different amounts of information, and, that data is messy and that sort of thing. The retailers, as you suggest, they have all the information across all the brands, but just within their individual vertical. So I'm picturing sort of this matrix, if you will. How do you fill out that whole picture? I think
Mm-hmm.
is key. And we've thought about that. Like, who does that? Is it retailers do that? Is it brands doing that? Is it agencies do that? So you've seen kind of interesting acquisitions in the agency world where, they're obviously working with a lot of brands. They're working across all of these retailers. They've got these, consumer kind of targeting solutions. Are they going to be the ones that kind of bring this all together? Is there a clean room company that can like make that all happen? I don't know the answer to it, but I do think that that's where a ton of value creation's going to happen. I think this prediction's interesting, this kind of specific prediction about a retail media data co-op. And I think it would make a lot of sense, at least in theory. What it exactly looks like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I mean, it sounds great, just rolls off the tongue for me. But like technically speaking, I'm sure it's very complicated, and thus we haven't seen any of them yet. But really, these retail media networks that have been, these retailers have invested in it. It's a great value prop for them. It's a great value prop for the brands that sell through these retailers. But just there is, when we look at the capabilities that Amazon has and the audience targeting capabilities, it's just a no-brainer. It's so easy to spend money on Amazon because of the richness of their data and the ability to target specific audiences that are super niche. And so for the 60 odd retail media networks that have been launched in the last 5 years, I think they're going to need to find a way to work together. And from my very, very elementary understanding um, of data warehousing, I believe that it is possible through some of these existing frameworks, like a Snowflake, or some kind of data warehouse where it is the customer data is still private, but we're still able to connect different households together and have a unified view of the customer. It's possible. I'm sure it's very difficult, but to be able to continue investing in their media networks, these retailers will need to step up their customer data value prop.
And maybe it's co-op, maybe it's also just consolidation, in the industry. For example, a big sort of thesis around the Kroger Albertsons deal is that this is like a acquisition for data. I think it might be a little bit overblown, but like an acquisition driven by the potential in retail media. I don't think that's the end all be all.
Yeah, it's a
But
cherry on top.
yeah, but it could be a co-op. It could be more consolidation in the retail ecosystem broadly.
Yes, yes. Well, this was fun. I'm looking forward to seeing where 2024 shakes out with our predictions. Some are bull case, some are bear case. But this is always fun to recap the year and look ahead with you, Russ. And for anyone listening who's not familiar with Stratably, one of the best resources out there for retail trends, frameworks like the incrementality framework, um, original primary research on what's happening and where brands are spending their time and money as well. So check out stratably.com, and Russ on LinkedIn as well, one of the best LinkedIn follows that you could make this year.
Well, thank you so much for that, Kiri. I love this particular podcast because we get the chance to take a step back. Wait, what did we talk about at the beginning of the year? What happened in the last year? And then think
Yeah,
ahead to the future. So this is a fun one. Thank you for inviting me on again and for the kind words. Very much appreciate it.
thanks. And happy holidays to everyone listening.